There is footage of it. Grainy surveillance video from a downtown Chicago sandwich shop. April 2007 lunch rush. Dozens of people in line. Tables full, a normal Tuesday. Then a door opens and an animal walks in. It does not run. It does not flinch. It crosses the entire floor of the restaurant, navigates between chairs and standing customers, and steps into an open drink cooler. It lies down between the bottles. It stays there for 53 minutes. Nobody chased it out. People pulled out cameras and filmed it. Staff stood back and called animal control. The animal watched all of this with what can only be described as calm indifference. The news cycle got maybe a day out of it. Lost Coyote finds air conditioning, funny footage, good end of broadcast material. Then it was over, except that nothing about what happened in that cooler was funny and the animal was not lost. What that footage actually captured was a wild predator standing 6 feet from 40 people during a lunch rush in the center of one of the largest cities on Earth, without a single sign of stress. No trembling, no panting, no attempt to bolt, just an animal that had decided a cooler full of drinks was a reasonable place to wait things out, and was comfortable enough around human beings to do exactly that. A researcher at Ohio State University named Stan Gehrt, who has spent over 2 decades studying urban coyotes in Chicago, would later say that what made the behavior so striking was not that the animal got inside. Animals get inside buildings. What was striking was the behavior once it was in. That animal had effectively done what no wild predator is supposed to be able to do. It had switched off its fear response in a room full of humans. You do not train that out of a wild animal in 1 generation. Before explaining what that animal was, it is worth establishing how many of them there are. Chicago has an estimated 2,000 coyotes within its metropolitan limits. Not in the forests outside the city, inside it. Gehrt's team fitted over 1,000 of them with GPS collars over the course of the project and found that the animals were not skirting the edge of urban space. They were living in it, denning in cemeteries, under highway overpasses, in the landscaped scrub behind shopping centers, moving along rail corridors and drainage channels, using the city the way the city's residents use it, as habitat. Manhattan has a breeding pair. They are known to wildlife photographers by the names Romeo and Juliet. They reached the island by trotting down from Westchester County into the Bronx, and then simply walking across a railroad bridge. They now raise pups on the grounds of Central Park near a Shakespeare theater. When they were first confirmed in 2021, it made news briefly, then stopped being news. A breeding pair of wild predators raising young in the middle of Manhattan, and within a year, it was already background noise. Los Angeles has them, so do Denver, Seattle, Atlanta, and Washington, where they raise their young in Rock Creek Park, 3 miles from the White House. There are documented coyotes in virtually every major American city: Boston, Dallas, Toronto, San Francisco, Portland. The number most often cited by researchers studying the population is somewhere between 3 and 5 million animals across North America. Nobody has counted them precisely because you cannot. They are too widespread, too adaptable, and too good at not being seen. The question worth asking is not why they are in cities. The question is what kind of animal this actually is, because it is not quite what the word coyote suggests. In 2014, a team led by Javier Monzon at Stony Brook University, working alongside wildlife ecologist Roland Kays, did something that had not been done at scale before. They sequenced the full genomes of more than 400 coyotes taken from across the eastern United States and Canada, using 63 genetic markers specifically chosen to distinguish ancestry between wolf, coyote, and domestic dog lineages. The results were not what a simple species ID would suggest. The average genome of an eastern coyote came back approximately 64% coyote, 26% wolf, a mixture of eastern wolf and gray wolf, and 10% domestic dog. A separate meta-analysis covering 20 years of genetic studies across the Northeast put the numbers at roughly 60, 30, and 10. Those percentages matter because they are not contamination. They are not rounding error. A 1/4 to 1/3 of the genome of every eastern coyote is wolf DNA, and that wolf DNA is functional. It codes for real traits: size, skull shape, pack behavior, prey range. The popular name for what that analysis describes is the coywolf. The scientific debate over whether it qualifies as a distinct species is ongoing, and some researchers, K's included, prefer the term eastern coyote, arguing that 60+% coyote ancestry means the coyote classification still holds. But the debate is about taxonomy, which is a naming convention. The animal itself is not in dispute. It is genuinely different from the western coyote that most people picture when they hear the word. Coyotes are not native to eastern North America. That is the part of the story that almost no one learns. For most of the past several thousand years, coyotes were animals of the American West and Southwest. Open plains, desert scrub, dry grasslands. Nothing about the dense, wet hardwood forests of New England, the Appalachians, or the Great Lakes region suited them. Wolves held that territory, and wolves and coyotes do not coexist well. Wolves kill coyotes, not occasionally, routinely, as a matter of ecological fact. So, the eastern forest was wolf country, and the coyote stayed out. Then, over about a century and a half, humans systematically dismantled that arrangement. The first piece was the forest itself. Beginning in the 1700s and accelerating through the 1800s, settlers cleared the eastern forests for farmland on a scale that is hard to visualize now. By 1900, states like Ohio and Pennsylvania and New York had lost the majority of their original tree cover. What replaced it, fields, pasture, hedgerows, the edges between cleared land and second-growth brush, was actually closer to the kind of habitat coyotes knew from the West. The second piece was the wolf. By the early 1900s, the eastern wolf, a distinct subspecies, smaller than the gray wolf and more closely related to the red wolf, had been shot, trapped, and poisoned into functional extinction across its entire historical range. The gray wolf was largely gone too. What had been the top of the eastern food chain for thousands of years was simply removed. That left an ecological vacancy, a predator-sized hole in the structure of the eastern forest that nothing was filling. Around 1900, coyotes began moving east. The expansion split around the Great Lakes. Animals moving south of the lakes pushed into the Ohio Valley and eventually down toward the Gulf states. Animals taking the northern route moved up through Ontario, and there they encountered something that changed everything. In Ontario, in the region around Algonquin Provincial Park, there was a remnant wolf population. Eastern wolves that had survived the extermination campaigns, isolated and cut off from other wolves, with no viable wolf mates left to breed with. When the coyotes arrived moving east, the two species interbred extensively. Wolf genes flowed into the coyote population in enormous quantities. Dog genes came in too from feral and semi-feral dogs living near settlements. The animal that emerged from that mixing event, and it took several decades to stabilize, was not the same animal that went in. It was larger with a broader skull and stronger jaws. It had inherited behavioral traits from the wolf that the coyote did not have: the tendency to run in coordinated family groups, the ability to target and bring down prey as large as white-tailed deer. That animal spread east. It reached Maine in the 1930s. It swept through New England, the mid-Atlantic, and south through the Appalachians. By the 1970s, it was in every northeastern state. By the 1990s, it was in the mid-Atlantic. By the 2000s, it was being documented in the deep south. The wolf had taken thousands of years to establish itself in the east. Its replacement did the same job in about 4 human generations. The coy wolf's success comes down to one thing. It inherited genuinely useful traits from all 3 of its ancestors, and those traits happen to complement each other in an environment that humans created. From the wolf, it got size. An eastern coyote typically runs 30 to 50 pounds. The largest verified specimen, a male taken in Newfoundland in 2012, weighed 82 pounds. A western coyote averages around 20. It also got the wolf's hunting architecture: a broader skull, thicker neck musculature, and jaws powerful enough to grip and hold large prey. From the domestic dog, it got something less obvious, but possibly more important: a reduced threat response around humans. Dogs have been selected over 15,000 years, specifically for the trait of tolerating human proximity without stress. That trait appears to have carried over. It is part of why an eastern coyote can lie in a drink cooler in downtown Chicago for 53 minutes without going into shock. From the coyote, it kept the core characteristic that has made coyotes the most ecologically flexible carnivore in North America: the ability to eat almost anything and live almost anywhere. Deer and rabbits when available, fruit, insects, garbage, roadkill when not. The coyote is not a specialist. It is, by evolutionary design, a generalist, and that generalism is exactly what urban life selects for. The combination produced an animal that can hunt deer in a rural forest, scavenge in a suburban neighborhood, and move invisibly through a major city, often within the span of a single night. Gehrt's GPS tracking data from Chicago showed individual animals with home ranges extending 40 square miles. They move at night, shift routes regularly, and cross busy streets with apparent understanding of traffic patterns that researchers still find difficult to fully account for. In 2018, Roland Kays and his colleague James Hody published the most comprehensive range map ever assembled for the species. They pulled together more than 12,000 occurrence records spanning a century of sightings, specimens, and verified reports. And what they built is a picture of one of the most dramatic range expansions any large predator has ever managed. Coyotes now occupy all 49 mainland states, Alaska to Florida, Maine to Southern California, every biome in between. They crossed sea ice to reach Newfoundland, an island they had no historical presence on. They pushed the full length of Mexico, through Guatemala, across the thin land bridge of Central America, and by the early 2000s, they had crossed the Panama Canal. Trail cameras in the Darien Gap, the dense jungle on the Colombian border that has historically stopped almost everything, have captured them on the edge of South America. They did all of this in 1 century, the same century in which global mammal populations declined by over 80% by biomass, the century that eliminated the passenger pigeon, nearly eliminated the American bison, pushed hundreds of predator species toward the edge of viability. Coyotes thrived. While other large animals retreated from human pressure, the coyote moved into the space humans created and expanded into it. Kays has said it directly. The coyote is succeeding in the human age in a way that almost no other large mammal is. That is not an accident, and it is not just luck. It is the result of a specific biological inheritance that happened to match the specific kind of landscape humans produce. It should be said clearly, not every scientist accepts the coywolf framing, and the objections are not trivial. The primary one is the numbers. If an animal is 60 to 64% coyote by genome, calling it a coywolf gives the impression of a roughly equal split that does not exist. The wolf fraction is real and it is functional, but the majority heritage is coyote. Calling it a new species implies a level of reproductive isolation, breeding only with its own kind, that the animal does not maintain. Eastern coyotes continue to interbreed with both coyotes and wolves, wherever their ranges overlap. Its deer hunting is real but qualified. It takes fawns, the sick, and animals weakened by winter more than it takes healthy adults. It typically hunts in pairs rather than large coordinated packs. It is not filling the same ecological niche as a wolf pack, and calling it that overstates the case. It has not, in any documented case, posed a genuine threat to a healthy adult human being. A child was seriously injured in a 2010 incident in Nova Scotia, and there are attacks on small pets that are well documented. But the coy wolf as dangerous predator narrative that sometimes runs through hunting forums is not supported by the record. The giant specimens that sometimes appear in hunting camp stories get larger with each retelling. The verified record for the species is 82 pounds. Most animals are considerably smaller, so the skeptics are right that some of the popular coverage has run ahead of the science. The name is genuinely contested. But The genetics are not contested, and the behavior is not contested. An animal carrying that much wolf DNA and that much dog DNA in a population of millions spread across 2 continents, occupying ecological roles that did not exist before, behaving in ways that distinguish it measurably from its Western relatives. That is not a standard coyote that got some press coverage. Whatever you call it, it is something new on the landscape. Here is the thing about the coy wolf that is most difficult to explain to someone who has not thought about it. The reason almost no one knows it is there is not that it hides particularly well, it is that it is so common it has become invisible. A rare animal gets attention. A glimpsed wolf, a photographed mountain lion. These make news because they are exceptional. The coy wolf is not exceptional. It is, by any reasonable population estimate, one of the most numerous wild carnivores in North America. But it does not look like what people expect a predator to look like. It looks like a medium-sized dog with a pointed face and a brushy tail. Most people who see one assume it is a dog or a fox, or simply do not register it as worth noting. The animals in Chicago that Gehrt's team tracked were not living on the outskirts of the city. They were in the densest residential and commercial areas, moving between green corridors, parks, golf courses, the narrow strips of brush alongside rail lines at night. Most of the people whose neighborhoods they moved through had no idea they were there. Some of the GPS tracks ran directly behind apartment buildings in neighborhoods where the animal could walk from block to block without once crossing open pavement. Millions of Americans live within a mile of a coy wolf and have never consciously seen one. That is not a population in hiding. That is a population that has learned, over roughly a century of living near humans, that humans are most dangerous when they notice you. So the easiest survival strategy is not to be noticed. It works. The sandwich shop in Chicago had cameras on the door, cameras on the counter, cameras everywhere. The footage of that animal is still available online. It is worth watching again, now that you know what you are looking at. That is not a lost coyote cooling off in summer heat. That is an animal whose lineage absorbed 2 other species over the course of a century, built a body twice the size of its desert ancestors, developed the behavioral flexibility to hunt deer in the Adirondacks and navigate city blocks in Chicago, and spread across 49 states and the full length of 2 continents while most people were looking elsewhere. The wolf was gone from the eastern United States by 1900. In the century that followed, something filled the space it left, not the wolf itself, not the coyote that pushed east from the plains, something that formed from the collision between those 2 lines with a little dog thrown in at the edges, and became an animal that had not existed before. It is in every mainland state right now. It is in most major cities. It is in the forests of New England and the swamps of Louisiana and the edges of the Darien Gap, looking south into a continent no coyote has ever reached. Call it a hybrid, call it an eastern coyote, call it a coy wolf. None of the names quite capture what it actually is, which is one of the only large predators on Earth that is expanding its range during a mass extinction event in a world increasingly shaped by humans, because it figured out how to use the things humans build: the rail lines, the highway corridors, the golf courses, the park systems, the garbage, as habitat. The thing in that cooler was not lost. It was exactly where it meant to be, and it is out there right now, in the gap between the houses, in the park 3 blocks from wherever you are reading this, doing what it has been doing for 100 years. Moving forward quietly, while everyone's attention is somewhere else.